you. Welcome, everyone, to March 26, 2024 UTRCA Board of Directors meeting. I'll call it to order at 9:30 a.m. Just a reminder that Emily Chandler is serving as our meeting host. So if those of you online have connection problems or issues with technology, please contact Emily through the chat feature. I believe we have Skylar, Peter, and Skylar, Scotty, and Peter online this morning. Welcome. Please make sure, sometimes it's hard to see online, so if you do want to participate, just speak out and we'll make sure that you get recognized. Also, today's meeting is being live streamed on the UTRCA YouTube channel. Please refrain from whisperers or side conversations while the meeting is running, as they could get picked up by the microphones. When the squares glow red, the microphones are muted, and they are on right now, so that's good. We do have regrets from Harj, and Tom is absent, I believe, as well. So we will continue with the agenda. We'll start with the territorial acknowledgement. We will begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is traditional territory of the Attawandaron, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Wapak peoples who have longstanding relationships to the land, water, and region of Southwestern Ontario. The local First Nation communities of the area include Chippewas of the Thames First Nation, Oneida Nations of the Thames, Munsee Delaware Nation, and Delaware Nation at Moravian Town. In the region, there are 11 First Nation communities and a growing Indigenous urban population. We value the significant historical and contemporary contributions of local and regional First Nations and all the original people of Turtle Island. Are there any modifications to the agenda? None. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? None. I do not believe there's any presentations and delegations. And so we will go down to item administrative business, item 5.1, which is the approval of the minutes. Now, there was an error remission in the January 2024 minutes that was brought to the attention of staff after their approval February meeting in regards to item 10, which was the elections, section 4, finance and audit committee. And the minutes say a vote would be conducted to elect 3 positions. It should have said 4 positions. And in the list of people elected to the 2024 finance and audit committee, only 3 names are listed, which is hard. He should have been added to that one. So it was a test first, so we failed. so we'll have to make sure we do better job of reading the minutes. So thank you for staff and the person who bring that up. But to correct that, we will. I just need a motion, and this one requires a 2/3 vote because it's outside of our procedure bylaw. So I will ask for a motion to amend the motion that was adopted to approve the January 30th meeting minutes as posted on the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority website by striking it as posted and replaced with as amended. Is there someone willing to make that? Sandy and Ann as a seconder? Is there discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that is passed by 2. So thank you for that. And then we will go on to approval of the February 27th minutes. Is there a mover to, now everybody's reading over them. Is there a mover and a seconder for the minutes of February 27th? Debbie and George. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. I don't believe there's any business rising from the minutes or correspondence. So we will now go to number 6, reports for consideration. And the first one is 6.1. The proposed additions address the recommendation by Hugh, and I thank Hugh for that. Allow for improved continuity on the committee. The additional duty included in the TOR provides staff and committee members with a form to ask questions and seek clarification prior to being spent on the presented to the board. And so there's different policies and stuff that can happen, but we can certainly have a discussion on that. But I'll turn it over to Tracy for further.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. Through you, just wanted to recognize the opportunity to look at our terms of reference again. We usually do this annually, but recognized that there's a few policies that are planned to come forward to that committee, and also have that opportunity to have a bit of a sounding board for staff to get some feedback whenever there's any significant financials, transactions, or policies. So adding that as well to the terms of reference. So suggesting that an amendment to the one provided by Hugh, that also that the board approves the additional proposed changes as outlined in the staff report. And certainly Christine's here as well. If anyone has any questions regarding the report.
Excellent. Questions of the report? None. Is there a mover for the recommendation? You. Okay. Second. Discussion on that? Okay, none. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And we will go to item 6.2, which is reappointment of officers. And I will turn that over to Teresa.
Thank you, Mr. Brian. We also, since the publication of this report, we received a updated from the province for provincial offenses officers designations by the ministry. I know Emily had sent that to you, so I can pull up the correspondence. And again, it's really recognizing the changes to the Conservation Authorities Act. It impacts both our officers in regard to Section 28 for the administration of our regulation, but also Section 29 when it comes to our lands and trespass to property. So with the report, you can see the number of different officers listed, as well as which section of the regulation. This is to make sure that our officers that are listed are currently designated officers, and just to provide this sign off for the enforce both Section 28 and 29 under the new regulation. This reappointment will allow us to reflect the updated legislation. So this is from the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, and again, just recognizing that the designation revokes those previous designations that we had approved by the board over time, and now this new legislation takes effect.
The housekeeping, I got to make sure that we're current people can still continue to perform their duties.
Certainly Brett and Jenna are here as well to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board on this? Seeing none, is there a mover for the recommendation? Paul and Mark. Discussion? None. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. And we will now move down to 6.3, which is the new Conservation Authorities Act requirements. I turn that directly over to Tracy to start that conversation.
Yes, through the chair. Lots happening in advance of April 1st. And the timeline is being reported intended to have what we need to transition in place. We've also included the interim policy and transition policies with the report as attachments. But we've been having regular meetings with Conservation Ontario as well to help ensure that all conservation authorities were kind of on the same page and to have a bit of a forum, some feedback and clarification, because there are some items that are new that were not anticipated, and are some exceptions. So having these regular meetings, one was just yesterday afternoon, but Conservation Ontario was able to provide kind of a guidance document for conservation authorities to update their policies and procedures. And one of the polls that happened late last week was just to see where all CAs are. If all but 11% are looking at having transition policies in place right now, within so 11% will have full policies in place by April 1st. The remainder are trying to establish a little bit more time to fully develop policies, have some consultation with the municipalities, recognizing that some of these exceptions are not just in our building departments, but also with drainage superintendents. So having more detailed policies and procedures developed over the next several months. Again, allows us some more time for some consultation. With that, a few other updates that were provided. We know that getting this information out, having these conversations with municipalities, there's already been a letter that's gone out to all of our municipal members once the regulation was announced. But there's also a session being planned with AMO and Conservation Ontario. Something similar happened when Bill 23 changes were announced. I think that was really well received. Again, policies are going through a similar process, and all municipalities will need to be updated. So having that consistent messaging, I think, is important. As well, just yesterday, we found out that communications will be going out in a joint letter with Conservation Ontario and the Drainage Superintendents of Ontario. So they've had some good discussion about and some of the process, some of the benefits of what does the exemption mean? Certainly a full permit isn't required, but there's still the recommendation to move forward with some of those, even with routine maintenance, some of those notification aspects that are currently utilized. It's just recognizing that the permit steps won't be needed. Again, there's a number of benefits for having these processes in place. And often it's the CAs that are the first ones that are getting notifications and calls when, oh, there's someone working in a water course. We know that the drains being worked on, it helps with those public concerns. Oftentimes overlapping work plans. We could be doing work and having monitoring plans in a creek and need to know if the municipalities are planning maintenance works at the same time. And also concerns with our stream gauge infrastructure as well. Having that forum for notification helps us be aware of when there might be some disruptions to that network or odd results. So certainly that's been something that's being finalized. Again, making sure that there's clear expectations between the drainage community and conservation authorities. Lots going on, and just recognizing there needs to be a little bit more time to, again, have those meetings and discussions and same page and have those consultations before having a fulsome policy. Gemma, certainly taking the lead on a number of these factors, and the table provided in the report kind of gives a good progress to date where we're at, but expect more to come. Jenna, did you want to say anything?
Happy to take questions.
Perfect. Well, certainly this is just another change that we've seen. I guess there's been 14 changes to the Conservation Act since this current government has gone to power. So this is just another one. So hopefully this will provide some stability and lead to some a major one. So I think it is important to note that there is an intern policy here for us to discuss, because there is a lot of work for staff to do to implement the new changes fully. But I'll certainly open the floor up to questions. I see Skylar's hand, and then we'll.
Thank you, and appreciate the work that staff have been doing. And through the chair, I'm wondering, I know that you mentioned you want to spend a bit of time doing some engagement with municipalities. And I'm just wondering if staff have given any thought to doing some stakeholder engagement with developers and consultants of developers, both on this new information and providing education, as well as receiving maybe some feedback from them.
Yeah, through the chair to you, Skylar. Absolutely. I think that's the intent. When we received the new regulation February 16th, we recognize there's not enough time between February 16th and April 1st to do any kind of meaningful engagement or consultation. And so hence the reason why we're moving forward with this interim policies to give us we look at a broader policy document to have some larger consultation with both our municipalities and the public. And really get people more engaged and involved in the changes and the policies moving forward.
If I could follow up through the chair, that sounds good to me. So I'm wondering, because I have heard from some London-based developers and consultants that they'd be interested in that kind of opportunity and perhaps like a focus group setting. I'm just wondering if I could perhaps send along that contact information so that staff would be able to invite them to those sessions.
That's a very good point. Education is going to be a big one on this, because staff are learning, the board is gonna have to learn, and the public and our member municipalities are gonna have to learn as well, because this is something new and it's not all spelled out in plain English yet. So it'll take some time to form those policies, and that'll have to be educated for sure. Mark, please.
Yeah, on page 5, there's 11 so-called key variances listed. My question is about number 4, reducing the regulated area surrounding provincially significant wetlands but greater than 2 hectares in size from 120 meters to 100, just to 30 meters. Is that a negative as far as our sort of overlooking and overseeing of projects?
Yeah, through the chair to you. It's definitely a big change because it's reducing our regulated area around those provincially significant wetlands, but also wetlands greater than 2 hectares in size. So it reduces kind of the circulations that we'll see for properties around wetlands. But from a regulatory perspective, I mean, generally, if people were willing to stay 30 meters away from any kind of wetland, we were really kind of willing to work with them. So that change doesn't have a huge impact in terms of what we regulate. I think we're still looking for that 30 meters setback is kind of the standard. We're pretty happy to see development happening outside of that 30 meters. And we were, really hard pressed to see people stay 120 meters away. So that was hard to regulate, that 120 meters. But it will certainly reduce the number of circulations that we'll see and number of permits that would be required.
Do you ever have the request, this might sound like an odd thing to say, but ask for permission to move the wetland?
Sid?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff, kind of following up with Councillor Frank's comments. Are we reaching out to municipal councillors to help them in understanding some of the changes? Because often it seems there's communication issues around some development applications. So helping them to be aware of the changes might also be helpful, not just to staff. So is there anything in the works in terms of that kind of opportunity for municipal councilors?
Jenny, do you want to start?
I can, yes, through you, Chair. I guess we're certainly willing to do that. And I think in the letter we provided to our municipalities, we offered to come to council or to meet with staff, kind of whatever the municipality is interested in, we're certainly willing to do. But in terms of actually targeting specific councils or all councils, we haven't really come up with a plan for that yet. But we are obviously willing to do that and happy to do that and are kind of offering that through staff. But we haven't actually had anyone reach out saying, could you come to council and give us a presentation?
Yeah, that kind of worries me because I think you can never under communicate a change like this. So keep asking and even set something up and then tell them you're holding something, you're invited, come on down. Might be more effective as this rolls out. Because one of the big concerns I always have is there tends to be a communication issue. So I'm noticing on page 15 of the report, that's the small number 15. The 21 days is new, but we generally, if everything's complete, we give notification well before 21 days. Where I think the issue comes in is if I show up with a bunch of paper like this and throw it down and it's incomplete, I'm going to complain you haven't dealt with it in 21 days. So it's kind of helping everybody involved in the process to understand what does complete mean? What's complete for us may be different than what's complete for a municipality. So it's trying to help members understand that we are facilitating when we get everything we need to be able to facilitate. And the last question is kind of, we're proposing a phased in approach. That's Conservation Ontario. And you said 89% of the CAs are doing this on a phased approach. Do we have any idea what the minister's expectations were by setting an April 1st deadline for what can be significant changes? Like, we have to redo a whole manual. So are we subject to any sort of pressure from the province to get all that work done next week? Because that's what April 1st is. Through the chair to staff.
I don't know, Jenna wants to start with that one or not, or?
I can. Yeah, through the chair, we haven't received any direction on how to transition from the province. So we were given the new regulation. We were invited to a webinar where staff presented the new regulation, but I would say it was very much reading the text of the new regulation to us, and really no clarification or guidance provided on how we transition. So CO has been great in terms of leading some guidance material for CAs and providing some leadership in terms of how we transition and how we manage this. But really there is no direction from the province. So I don't know what will happen after April 1st. Hopefully we're taking the right steps and taking the right approach, but there's really no direction from the province on it. And I guess to your initial question, I would say that a lot of the changes the province has made has really to formalize the process more, right? Our permitting process has been, I would say casual in a sense, and each CA has kind of their own approach, and it's really trying to create some consistency among CAs across the province. And I like the term that Angela Coleman from Conservation Ontario has been using, which is trying to get all CAs across Ontario to become modern regulators. And really just kind of modernizing the process, formalizing the process, and making sure our process is documented and well-established and very clear for applicants and developers what our process is. So that's what a lot of this change is about. Of course, there's other broader changes with implications that we're still trying to understand. But a lot of these changes are kind of administrative in nature and really trying to get everybody to be modern regulators. And as you know, there's big differences between conservation authorities across the province. I mean, no one can compare it to the Toronto Region Conservation Authority. It's huge and it's a giant beast on their own. We're more of kind of the medium to large sized conservation authority, of which there's several, but there's a lot of really small rural CAs out there too. And their process is very different from ours. So it's really trying to create some consistency and formalize the process.
So finally, this work will be done sometime this calendar year. So I assume it'll show up on the work list. And so we'll be able to ask on this each meeting if we care to. But your goal is to get all this done before the end of the year, hopefully sooner. Okay, thank you.
That's right.
Just clarification, Skylar, do you have your hand up still, or is that?
No, it's new. It's a new one.
I'm just gonna go to Anna first and then we'll.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to follow up on Sandy's comments, the importance of communication, in particular with councils, I think is really, really important. That's where a lot of the decisions are made, and understanding our regulations. I really like the terminology modern regulators, what CAs are, and I think we need to really communicate and have councils and planning committees in particular that's having that information shared. There's not enough of that out there, in my opinion. I do want to thank staff. There's a lot of work that's that's already being had, but going forward, I hope that we've got the workforce there to implement it. And many thanks for giving all this to us as well.
Skylar, then Jim, please.
Thank you. Following up on some of Sandy's questions, but I'm just wondering, I know that the city's providing Upper Townsend money for streamlining work. So I'm wondering, how does this work align or is going to be incorporated with the streamlining efforts as well?
Yeah, through the chair, I think that this will tie in well. I mean, I think we're reviewing policies, and if it can happen in conjunction with the review, the service level review that the city has to pay for, I think we're hoping that will identify areas where we can streamline and make improvements as well. And that's what we're doing through a lot of this change too, is trying to look at ways that we can further streamline and improve our process. So I'm hoping they'll tie in well together.
Thank you, through the chair. So my question really is regarding when you look at Bill 108, you know, more homes, more choices, Bill 23, building faster, less red tape and whatnot. And then when you get down to the implementation and you look at more mapping or different things like that, I'm really curious with your discussions with all the CAs for this consistency, what the regulation's trying to do and what you might end up with. Would they possibly be counterproductive, like more stringent? And, you know, it's,
I don't know, I think maybe I could take a start at that. Through the chair, I know one of the concerns are raised by the province in streamlining, and one of the way they look at reducing regulation is reducing the number of regulations. So right away, by reducing each CA from having an individual regulation to represent themselves, now there is one regulation for all CAs to follow. So in a sense, it may look like, you know, it is now reduced regulation because there isn't 36 individual regulations. It's now one. But when it comes down to the implementation side of things, you know, the goal is for streamlining. Yes, there may be some activities that are now exempt, but those exempt activities are for typically non-habitable structures, structures of small size, you know, docks that don't require any reinforcement. Those types of things, at least in our practice, we haven't required permits for anyway. And I don't think that achieves anything to get more homes built faster when we're talking about these accessory type structures. So again, it's a little bit of, you know, how you're perceiving it. Certainly those areas around wetlands being reduced from 120 meters down to 30 means that there's less areas that are regulated. However, as you just heard from Jenna, that's typically not where we were requiring a lot of permissions anyway. So, you know, the definition of water course, pollution and conservation of land, those definitions have changed as well. Maybe in some areas, there's been more of an impact. I would say our past practice, we typically looked at water courses that had bed and banks and used that as our definition. When it came to pollution and conservation of land, because they were never defined under the act, they were not heavily relied on as a test of the regulation. They would be applied if there was already an alteration to a water course, or if there's already in a floodplain or erosion area within a valley land. Well, then we would apply those additional tests, but typically as standalone tests, they weren't typically used. So maybe in some CAs that could be different, but I think in our practice, changes haven't really resulted in a lot, but it's now documenting a lot of those things.
thank you.
Jenna, I don't know if you want to add
I
on.
think the only thing I would add is that we've seen an awful lot of change over the last few years. And when you implement that much change that quickly, it's hard to keep up. And it certainly slows down the process. So I would say that much change that quickly has been counterproductive to the government's goal of more homes faster, not just at the CA level, but at the municipal level as well. And I think you'll hear that from the development community as well. This has been a lot of change for everybody to get their heads around. And when you're trying to deal and grapple with that much change, you can't help but slow down the process. So I would say it's counterproductive from that perspective.
Thank you.
I think we're always double checking.
Yes.
To go, wait, did that change? Is that still the same? Great point, Jenna.
What I would add to that is it's all about perspective. So if the government's trying to make things easier for applications to go through and make those changes, I know we've been asking for section 28 changes as well for clarity. So if they're trying to get that doesn't mean that everybody's going to be more streamlined. It means that these organizations like ours may have to be more complicated to get that infrastructure in place to be able to, before it becomes more streamlined. So it doesn't save everybody time or money. And so there's goals of trying to help one, but there's externalities to that as well. I did see Sandy's hand and then.
Speaking of streamlining the initiative that Councillor Frank just came up where are we with that? Has that started? Has the city paid for somebody to come here? Where are we with it?
So we provided a draft of the RFP that will be posted and sent out to interested consultants in December, and we haven't received it yet. So the city is still reviewing it, and they've provided me with regular updates that they're still undergoing review, and the review is taking longer than expected, so.
So again, I just wanted to be clear, not us holding this up. So maybe the city councilors can bring that to staff's attention. Thank you.
I guess the budget has something to do with that. Hugh, please.
Through you, the chair, in number 8, updated definition of a water course. Is that also going to affect a municipal drain that was created? Like, I'm not talking about a stream that's part of a municipal drain, but I'm talking about something was built. So if something was built, is that now, by your definition, a municipal drain, a water course?
Yeah, I think if it meets the definition of having a defined channel with bed and banks, if it's a drain, if it's another kind of water course, then it's a regulated water course. It meets that definition.
Further questions? Seeing none. Is there a mover for the recommendations? Debbie and Sandy for a seconder discussion. Well, I think we got a lot of information at last meeting, and then staff will provide an update here in an interim policy that will try to get us through until staff have time and the ability to be able to get the information needed to get those policies in place. But I think that obviously we had a lot of work for staff to do at the last meeting, and we now have more to do. So certainly there's no shortage of things to do in that department. So yeah, I'll be honest. I think I agree with all the comments around the consultation needs to happen, and that education is a big part of it. The good thing is that each municipality has a representative around the table. And so what I challenge everybody to do is go back to your municipality and say how important it is that they understand this and be a part of the education process, because this is a major factor of what the Conservation Authority does with municipalities, and it is important. That doesn't mean that staff will be able to give all the information right now because they might not have it themselves, but educate them on the process and the timelines about when that will be available and the changes that are out there. Because that dialogue is important. And of course, communication a two-way street. So I agree that if there's members of the public, developers, make sure they contact staff so they can get that information and have those conversations, because it doesn't do anybody any good if people don't have the information. So that is an important aspect of that, but we can use our power around the table to make sure that we get those important information back to our councils. I will just say that there tends to be a trend here, and maybe we're having conversations with our federal partner, our provincial partners, that the timelines provided for implementing this legislation is not helpful because it doesn't provide enough time to provide meaningful implementation before it becomes in effect. And so it creates conflict and it creates issues that way. So we can share those feelings as well. If we don't have a problem with changes, we've been asking for this, we're expecting it to come forward, but things need to be rolled out a little bit longer and have implementation periods so that can be brought out. A good policy can be put in place so there is more clarity. So I think that we can, and then I'm sure Conservation Ontario is having those conversations as well. There is a bit of a trend in current legislation, not only in this legislation, but others that seems to be a trend with so that needs to be communicated to them, because it does create difficulties, costly ones where resources have to be used to make sure that we meet their expectations of our municipal partners in the province. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, I'm just gonna confer with staff here for a sec, because I know we have somebody who's looking to join us for closed session. I don't know. They're not able. Okay, we will. Perfect. So I will ask for a motion to go into closed.
6.4.
Oh, Yes, we're already done. So 6.4, I will turn that over to Tracy.
Thank you, through the chair. Included with the report was also our inventory programs and services. You may recall that we've been providing quarterly reports, not only to the board here, but to the province as we move through our transition period. So with that, I noted in the report as well, we've had 16 of the 17 of our member participating municipalities join our cost apportioning agreement and represents 99.8% of our watershed cost apportioning. So South Huron was the only municipality that did not have a council resolution to enter into the agreement at this time. Next steps will be to take this information, post on our website, both the inventories of programs and services, but then all of our cost apportionment agreements. We have a governance page on our website. Again, it links to our board information, but also has an area for all of our requirements under regulation to post and be transparent to our area. So with that, you'll see that the inventory programs and services, it's been updated to reflect the 2024 approved budget numbers. We still provided our 5-year average annual cost, and in the notes, it's always been kind of a challenge. Many CAs identified that having a 5-year annual cost reflected not the greatest when we had COVID. We've had high inflation, so it's not always a great comparator. And certainly with this year having a number of additional needs and reporting requirements and deliverables to be added. So we'll see some differences there. And through this process as well, you'll remember this has been very different from how we used to budget. So there's certainly been a lot of refinements, and I'd say thanks again to Christine, because she's put a tremendous amount of effort to make her Questica reporting and teasing out categories of programs and services. The past, many of those activities are very fully integrated, and they were so in our budget. We've had to piece out that, and to all the managers for putting the time in to separate out those costs and make sure staff are budgeted appropriately. So it's been a tremendous amount of work, but now we have kind of the tools in place to allow us to report in this manner if required in the future. Again, I think it's a good snapshot in time to be having that comparison as we look to the programs and services that we offer now and any changes to future programming too. So, happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the board on the report? Okay, none. Is there a mover for the recommendation? Hugh. Mark. Discussion. Well, the one thing I want to do is there's moments in time where we forget how much work has happened and the point we had to get, more importantly, staff have had to get here. This is the start of the conservation, the changes. And I know we have a lot of work staff to do in the future, but right now this is getting very close to completion of starting the process of changing the way budgets are done, the category. This has changed the organization more than probably a lot of things in you know, not even the recent past, but before that. So I want to commend staff a lot. Tracy, thank you. And to all your staff, I know everybody's put a lot of work into this. It's a change. And so it's one of those things where I think that we do need to recognize that this is a major accomplishment that was started many years ago. And now it's just kind of the final hope thing, I would say, of that. And I do want to thank the member municipalities that signed on. Certainly that was appreciated, understanding that South Huron respected vote of the council, and they had their reasons for not signing on. But certainly those agreements were not easily attained. And I want to thank Tracy again for all her work for going around. Certainly a lot was learned about budget presentation in a new year. There was lots of questions. So again, if there's still questions out there from municipalities, reach out to your members. You know, there's information. This is something that's going to continue now, but that dialogue is certainly welcome. But again, this is a big check mark that's been a lot of work for the organization. So I think that needs to be recognized. Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Now we will ask for a mover, that the board of directors adjourns, that we will go into closed session. Is there a mover? You? Seconded by Sandy. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We will now camera. Everybody back? Will. Excellent. So the board did rise out of the session, and the board did provide direction to staff for agenda items 7.1 and 7.2 in closed session, and that's all there is to report on that at this time. So then we'll go to reports for information. Everything he said there was correct. 8.1 administration enforcement section 28. There is that report there for information. Is there any questions of the report before I ask for a move and seconder? Questions from Sandy, please.
If I understand it, through you to Jenna, that there's really only a few items on this report that the new regulations would then be that there wouldn't have been an application for. Is that correct? Like the drain maintenance would no longer require a permit?
Drain maintenance is now, municipal drain is now considered exempted from permit requirement. So we have been trying to seek additional clarification about the reasons of that, and I think you want to say something more about that. So it's hard to say. We do issue a lot of permits for drain maintenance, so it is something that will certainly impact our overall permit numbers at the end of the year. But we've still been seeking additional clarification about how our involvement in municipal drain process is changing as a result of these exemptions. And I'll turn it over to Tracy. We did have a meeting yesterday that spoke to this a bit more.
Yes, if I can, exactly what Jenna is saying, yes, although there may be exemptions for those permit requirements, much of the same process will remain. So routine maintenance and repair activities fall under a DART process, and those standard compliance letters, and will still be circulated to the authority. We'll still have the opportunity to review, you know, there is a little bit of a nuance where if there's works within a regulated wetland, they're not part of those exceptions or exemptions. Again, it might impact our revenue, it might impact the permit numbers, but our staff time allocations will still be fairly consistent with those two. So just kind of wanted to highlight that although the permit might not be there, it's still part of our regular process that we'll be following.
And all the other items that were on that section 28 report would still require a permit despite the changes that are coming into force in effect. Thank you.
I just have one point for clarification. On the last item on the list, 2924, it says that the permit was required by February 8th, 2024, and it was issued on February 28th, 24, but it says it complied with timelines. I just wanted to make sure, is that, if that could be just clarified, it may be like a typo or something like that, but I just wanted to make sure that that was.
Yeah, if you can leave that one with me.
Yep, no problem. Yes. So is there a mover and a seconder for information, some more questions? Paul and Mark, discussion on that? All I want to say is that I think if you look at the timeline, our staff do a very good job of getting permits out way before the requirements. So I'm not really worried about the new regulations as far as time goes, but that's a very good thing. That they're getting those out the door. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And we will move on to project status update. Again, lots of work going on there. You added. So we're now to about 4 pages. So staff are busy. You can see there's lots of stuff coming in the first half of the years. Any questions on that report? Being none, is there a mover and a second? George and Debbie? Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And we will move on to 8.3, annual health and safety summary, and I will turn it over to Tracy.
Yep, and I'm just gonna pass it over to Jennifer Howley, who's here, and she'll come up. She has a little bit of a slide graphic to present as well. But certainly having this information to inform our health and safety plans, to target kind of the activities that we're using maybe a little bit more education around. It's all part of what Jennifer does to protect all staff at the authority. So we certainly appreciate the work she does, but also having these reports kind of inform how we do our work for the year.
So through you, Mr. Chair, there is one correction I'd like to make on the report where we talk about near miss accidents investigation on page 2. We did not have any near misses last year. That should be a 0. And the graphic that's on the screen right now, it just tries to highlight different things that we're doing in the health and safety program, and obviously the involvement and the opportunity to participate for staff. Talks about the different training, things that the Joint Health and Safety Committee are doing as well. So I thought that would give a good overview of the report itself. If there's any questions.
Any questions of the report? Paul?
Yeah, the Health and Safety Excellence Program where says you need to complete 5 program topics. And if that's done, it results in rebates of over $23,000 from WSID. Who has to complete those topics? Is it all employees or?
So we have selected 5 topics and they're the foundation topics. So there's leadership, and there's role responsibilities, and then there's 3 topics related to the hazard management. So I have to develop those programs. They have to obviously go through our approval cycle with respect to managers, Joint Health and Safety Committee, and then we have to demonstrate training that staff have received training on those programs, and that they're living and breathing documents within the authority. And this all has to be completed by November 15th of this year.
So it's all staff gets this training eventually,
Staff will be doing the program.
including part-time staff or just full-time?
Yes, part-time staff. will be-
Everybody that works for them. Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Cindy?
Thank you for the health and safety information on the eclipse.
Oh, that's sorry. Yes, thank you for reminding me. Yeah, so that is being distributed to our staff. All staff are required to read that, and they can get up their classes programs as well. So I just thought that one might be interested.
Thank you, through the chair. I was just curious to know for health and safety training and all, is there a local or a central file system where all training, et cetera, is for the entire UTRCA? Like I'm even thinking of whether it be a Wildwood or a Piddock or Fanshawe people here. Is there a central of all training?
And I'm sorry.
A central location? If, for example, if I was in Woodstock and there happened to be an accident and somebody come in from WSIB and whatever, let's say it happened at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they may probably call and ask for all the safety training for these people tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock for a meeting. And is it all in one location or do you have to go to various locations?
No, so all safety training is kept through the HR department, whether it be online or paper or whatever. And so if there was an accident at 4 o'clock, I can imagine Brent would be calling me saying, hey, Jen,
Thank you very
Start
well.
digging up information.
Good job.
Further questions? Very much. As a mover and a seconder to receive for information. Sandy and Dean. Discussion. I do want to thank staff for also providing the board with the glasses. Hopefully it's not cloudy all day. I've been told it's once in a 375-year time frame that it comes by, so who knows? We might not see anything.
I'm not gonna be here for the next.
No. So, discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. And the Thames River Current, the March edition. Some great quotes in there. No, always read it. I gotta say, it gets better every month, with the new format. There's lots of great stories. It allows it to be, tell the story. So it is a good one to share once again with everybody that you can, because it lets everybody know what's going on. And thanks staff for putting that together. Is there a mover and a seconder? Anna and Mark, discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And committee updates. There is no committee updates, although the hearing committees will be meeting after this at 12:30. And then
Finance and audit is meeting next month.
in April, that's correct, yeah. So there'll be subsequent report after the next meeting. Number 10, notices of motion. Does anybody have a notice of motion they'd like to bring? Seeing none. Chair's notes, Chair's comments. Again, we passed the budget last time. We're getting back to our regularly scheduled items of just provincial changes and stuff to implement. But I gotta say again, we're seeing progress, the stuff that's happened. These are long range things that are, and you're gonna see that this year, there's gonna be a lot of that happening. So again, I want to commend staff for there's a lot of background work that has to be done before it gets to the board and to have those things implemented. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate the great discussion we've had at the board today, and as always, so thanks everybody for being involved. I will leave it there. And Tracy, I'm sorry, members. Oh,
The rural landowner workshop was held in Embro last Thursday evening. There was 55 people registered, so the room was full. And there was 4 excellent presentations. Dave Green, a local farmer, talked about his no-till cover crop and the biogester that they have on their farm. Phil Holst from Ducks Unlimited talked about wetland rehabilitation. And there were 2 staff presentations, one on the drainage project at the demo farm on the side of Thorndale, and the other on the Upper Thames tree planting program. So I just want to thank Brad Glassman and all the other Upper Thames staff that were involved in planning, presenting, and being there to talk to people that attended.
further comments? Sure, that's all. And now, Tracy.
Gonna say, and thank you to Paul for giving the opening remarks and welcoming people. Yeah, heard that was great night. So just wanted to give a reminder to everyone as well that the next meeting, the board is earlier than usual. I think it's Good Roads at our normal time slots. So it's Tuesday, April 16th. So make sure your calendars are updated to reflect that. It's a little bit unique. Other than that, yeah, lots to do, as Brian had mentioned, working away at all the projects that are due this year and dealing with regulatory changes at the same time. So we'll be back with lots more updates as we progress. Thank you.
Excellent. With that, I'll call for adjournment. You. And second by Skylar. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you, everyone.
Right into your schedule.
Just like we designed.
Yes. You're so organized.
So funny because of the